Our next demonstration is going to be by Ben Osteen from British Library, who's going to walk us through a really interesting online digital archive of images that the British Library has built. I'm just going to leave the world of Regency England abruptly. Okay. And hand over to Ben.
Okay, so my name is Ben Osteen. I'm the technical lead for the British Library Labs project, which is a Mellon-funded project. And this is a story about Mechanical Curator, which is a very handy label that we've used to cover a number of small projects that add up to a greater whole. So, there we go. So the key behind British Library Labs is that our main aim, almost our sole aim, is to work out how to get researchers to work better with the data that we already have at the British Library. So we have a large amount of material, and you'll soon see that it's not as large as we'd like, but we need more people to use it in more interesting ways, because there is only so far you can go with just the idea of a book. So, there we go. So what I'd like to do is bridge between researchers and data. And it would be nice if the bridge looked like this, very strong, structurally sound. But in reality, this is more the kind of bridge that I'm building. Because what I'm doing is very quickly trying to get something in place which we can see if it's useful or not. Is this a direction we should carry down? And if it is, then someone else, perhaps me, but generally someone else will come along and build a better bridge, one that's more suited for the task. But the point is to find out those points where the most potential can be had in terms of reuse, in terms of satisfying researchers' needs. This, again, is a nice quote about the kind of direction. We're not focusing on the perfection at the beginning, and that can be the most difficult problem that we have, to talk to researchers and remind them that yes, there is an ideological sort of wonderful thing that's coming from them, but maybe we should start with something that's a little bit rubbish and then build up to this, because if we just try to aim at this perfect realization of their idea, we may not get anywhere. So to give an example of this was one of the requests we had not so long ago by a researcher called Peter Francois, and he was interested in all the travel accounts. That was his thing. He wanted to get all the travel accounts so he could have a really good synoptic idea of what went on during there. That's really hard. It's one of those questions which is just so hard to answer properly because, and this is the result of our work with him, we created a tool called the Sample Generator where we took all of the 19th century works, which is the blue line, and that's the distribution of the amount of works that the British Library holds, and tried to show that there was an inherent bias with the digitized portion, which is the red line, that tiny little sliver down there. And obviously these lines aren't the same. So if you're only basing your research on digital, then there's a problem. And he wanted to use machine learning tools. He wanted to use the digital side of the technique. He didn't want to read them all personally. So what started as a question of, I want to divine all of the travel routes that were ever taken, turned into a thing of how can we get a better idea of what the truth is. And this was one of the things that started from the Mechanical Curator. We're trying to find out what the truth is of data. This was a sort of self-imposed challenge because, again, we're trying to get researchers to work with data. And if they can't answer questions like these, which are hopefully novel, then we're not really doing our job properly. So this was a challenge set to myself very early on in the project of what's required for a researcher to be able to answer this and find faces. So I think we've all used cameras or seen cameras where you take a picture and it'll recognize the faces, it will detect them in the frame. That's a fairly well-established technique. So I ran it across a collection of books, which we termed the Microsoft digitization. And that was from Microsoft Book Report, Book Digitization 2007-2008, where they came and digitized 65,000 volumes. The key part of this is it's public domain works. So before 1900, 18 something. I'm sure Ben White can fill you in on the dates further, because it was a very nice collection, because they not only gave us back the digitization, but they effectively renounced any contractual obligation that we had over it. We could use it as we saw fit, as long as we were within copyright. So back to the actual face detection. Did it work? Not really. Face detection algorithms are based on photographs, and we kind of expected it didn't work, but the key point was we had a system that allowed us to navigate and explore these books using code. And we wanted to get to that point internally before we tried to get more researchers on board. It was biased towards female faces for a variety of reasons. They were more often drawn towards the camera, so to speak, the page. Men were drawn more asymmetrically. They had beards, glasses, hats. They were more likely to throw off the facial detection, which is based on passport photos in the main. So that was an interesting side thing. But while I was doing this, I was pulling out random samples and exploring them on my screen. And what happened was people would hover behind me. So this was a set which we believed to be quite uninteresting. It was books roughly about travel. We didn't have that much crucial metadata about what these things were. But it was travel, some literature, nothing that interesting, at least from an illustration point of view. But it was. There were interesting things being brought up by the code I wrote to extract these images from the books. So I wrote small code called the Mechanical Curator. So this is a very fickle bit of code. It wanders through the books. It tries to find things that interest it in terms of composition, very crudely. And it tries to find more photos that are similar, more images rather. And it was putting out one every hour. And I was just experimenting to try and get the images out there, because at the moment they're inside books. And there isn't really any metadata database or table which tells you where all these illustrations were in the books, because it was discovering them. I used them for Christmas labels last year because they were just strange, unusual, had a nice effect. I printed on a rug just to see what came out. But the key thing that came from all of this is it made the illustrations in the books important. It gave us a hook on which to hang further work, because we have all these things. They were seemingly interesting. How can we take them further? Where can we put, as it turned out, 1,019,000 images at short notice, so we could do further work with them and for other researchers to work on them as well? So we put them on Flickr. And so this is the British Library collection on Flickr. We've put up a few more than the original set, just a few thousand more. And it's been really nicely successful. People have taken up the mantle of going through these very random images, because as you may have figured out, all we knew were the books they were from. We didn't know what these images were. We didn't know that it was a horse or a map or a picture of a cartoon horse riding through a street. We didn't know until we put them up there. And so far, we've had the community doing a lot of the curation themselves, of allowing us to build up these sets of different types of different things that have been found in there: ships, maps, portraits, heraldry even. And this means that you can now treat it more usefully. It's a useful collection. You can go in and find initial letters used in books. You can go in and find a lot of maps. I'll go on to why that's the case later. So we've got something that's now more useful, and now everything has a URL so that people can refer to it and cite it. This was a rather interesting point. I'm not going to answer it, but essentially Jonathan Jones raised the point of, this is great, but why isn't everything public domain online already? It's a fair point, but I'm not going to even attempt to answer that one. And so this was another thing about the Mechanical Curator. So we could see it building up a bit of steam early on last year. And so the impact it's had so far has been that we're getting around 20 million views every month. Just this morning, we passed 212 million views, 565,000. Over 150 tags have been added by contributors, not by us. They're the ones that characterize and classify the images in useful ways, perhaps creative, perhaps research, but we've had a very good amount of success. One of the things that we really want to do is try to work out the impact this really has. And so working with TSB last year, or Innovate UK as they're now known, there was a bid put forward to build a dashboard, a tool to be able to reverse engineer the impact by doing reverse image search, by using Google search to find out what the reuse is above and beyond what we actually know about. Because obviously public domain, no one needs to tell us anything. So we're hoping that that will report soon. The iterative crowdsourcing is ongoing. The Wikipedia have helped out immensely. This was a push that we started a few weeks ago to find more maps, because we have a georeference project at the British Library, which has just taken a bunch of things tagged with map and georeference them precisely by use of volunteer work. We've just done 3,221 a few months ago, and the new push to get more things tagged, I think we're up to around 20-ish thousand more maps to do, so got a lot more work to do there. I'm just going to finish by pointing out one of the main creative uses that we've picked up on. And this collage here is one of 4 that was done by an artist called David Normal. And this is based at the, he made it for the Burning Man this year to go round the base of the statue. And it was because of the randomness of the images online and the juxtaposition that he initially got some of the ideas that this could be a nice set to work with. He was told about the collection on Facebook by the lead guitarist of a punk band that he knew. So that just goes to say, don't draw a line in the sand and say only researchers we should tell or only X, Y. Just tell everyone, it will sort itself in the end. But these have been quite remarkable. They're 8 foot by 20 foot wide, and they use hundreds of images from the collection. He didn't simply reproduce them. He took them, formed a collage, and then redrew it himself and repainted it for a light box, which is quite a nice use. And this is what we're trying to engender, more use of the collection, whether it's for research, which is British Library Lab's main focus, or for creative use, because we'd rather not put any dividing line between the two, because research is creative. It's almost a meaningless word, creative. This is for everyone. So if anyone has any technical questions or any other questions, these are my details. But I'll leave it there.